Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're doing better and enjoying your day so far with a new OpTic substitute potentially coming into the fray. Los Angeles Thieves have also revealed they do not intend to lose for the rest of the season after a poor top 8 performance, losing to Vegas at Major 3. Drazah reckons they're now coming diffy to the rest of the year and don't intend to lose to anyone ever again. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you guys are new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, a new #1 player in the world on the ranked grind release for a brief period of time was none other than Paris. He got to the top of the ladder. He was absolutely hyped about it. And we can see a few down is Rated and Slacked and aBeZy and others. And also Scump, right? I believe, former Warzone player, or maybe not a former Warzone player. Also Xnid is this guy, is Falcons the Saudi Arabian team? If I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comment section below. But I know that there's potentially that might be what's going on there. Or maybe Xnid's another player entirely, I'm not exactly sure. But Scump also from the, for the Warzone side, I believe, previously. But Warzone right now is definitely in the mud, I think, as far as most people are concerned. And later in the day, Scump actually did get the #1 spot. So some have said that, okay, this guy's pretty good. Now, look, in fairness, last year, Doug Sentamato was #1 of the rank play leaderboards, and he's not exactly the best player in challenges mechanically, but he was still able to get #1. So it doesn't exactly say too much because just the way the SR tends to work here, I think, like, the system was, frankly, this is great what we currently have in ranked, but the system was better when it was back in World War II, when it was literally an ELO-based system. So you could only really get to about 3,000, and anything beyond that wasn't really possible because you kept playing against other players that were 28, 2900, and if you lost to them, you would lose a few points. If you beat them, you would lose, or you would win less points than you would lose if you lost, for example. So it kind of meant that just playing more and more didn't necessarily guarantee you to be the top of the leaderboards effectively, but I'm still obviously a talented player, and I do wonder if there's, you know, some players like Scump that could potentially make the transition to competitive COD if they wanted to, but Haggy was briefly #1, then it was taken away from him. Doug has also been making the point heavily to Infinity Ward, and he probably will do so every single day, about the current sprint glitch. I know that some people also looked into the Trello board that Infinity Ward have of things to fix with the game, and they didn't notice as of yesterday the unfortunate situation of this death cam glitch even being noticed, because we need this fixed ASAP, we need this fixed ASAP, as Doug is saying, because otherwise they can't play on the latest patch update, the pros, which means we're stuck with Fortress Control, and there is no easy replacement now. Even though Expo is better and they want to play it, they can't play it thanks to Infinity Ward. So they've got to get on that one quick. Hopefully the league, hopefully the players on them to tell them what's wrong and get them to put it to the top of their priority list, because it certainly needs to be, and hopefully there's some communication in play. Also an update on Crimsix. You guys might know that he made the transition to being a professional sim racing driver for FaZe, and he's got, I believe, tournaments every 3 weeks to a month or so. And you guys might have watched the first one in Katowice when he was kind of getting smoked by the field. He was about 3 seconds-ish off the pace back at Spa, like most of the drivers doing 2:15s. Porter put in a 2:18. So yeah, okay, at that time wasn't particularly good. However, he's been making good progress. He says that he's finally getting, you know, the feel of it. Feels like his feet are finally connected to his brain, talking about it, well, the times he's now doing. So he's a 2:18 there, I think it's around Spa, and he's now putting in a 2:16, and then I think he had another one here where he was putting in a 2:15.9. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see that Porter's making progress, and this time is pretty respectable, and isn't far off what the actual, you know, like traditional esports pro drivers are putting off. So looking forward to Crim being hopefully more competitive next time out, and by the end of the year, Crims are getting P11, baby. I can feel it in my bones coming around the corner. Also quickly on the Minnesota Rokkr, yes, they absolutely sucked hard during Major 3 the entirety of the cycle, but if you guys are local to Minnesota, or I believe Wisconsin, then there is some argument that maybe you guys should attend their home series, which is coming up. I believe there's tickets available for the Wisconsin one on April the 1st, and also St. Paul, Minnesota. So hopefully their team is actually better, but it's quite exciting as well that for some of these matches, these will be played on LAN with Florida and Los Angeles Guerrillas respectively, traveling out to Wisconsin and Minnesota, okay, for London and Boston for these ones, to play these games, and with any luck, I guess these are achievable games. I guess Rokkr didn't want to invite FaZe or anything because they'd get bodied in front of their home crowds. These should be winnable series for them, and maybe with the same roster that they presently had, they got destroyed with back at Major 3. And the team they have lost to, of course, was Thieves. We'll see in a second, but also wanted to note a potential new substitute option for OpTic Texas. Now, we don't exactly know what the situation is here with OpTic. I believe that OpTic Scump is technically not really their sub anymore. iLLeY is probably that guy technically by the numbers, and iLLeY, from what last we know, was back in India. So whether he's actually an attainable substitute is a bit of a question mark right now. And obviously, if Shotzzy or anyone else was to have any issues, then would iLLeY be the man to step in, or would they need somebody else? Now, after dropping, I think, 49 kills last night in this game of ranked, Methodz was asked the question by Shotzzy, why did you retire? How about coming back and being our 5th man for the team in case we need it.
If they come through orange, they'll be weak. Top sign dead. Dead orange, dead orange, dead.
Nice. Bro, why did you guys ask my guys?
P1, gonna be orange.
Team Miguel, bro.
Orange.
Yeah, bro. Get heal, teammate.
I have all left.
Bro, I'm not getting healed, bro.
I'm dead.
Oh, wait, the second.
We're gonna stay
Oh,
out.
never mind. I'm on Mars, never mind.
Nice.
Yeah, might be teammate, might
One
be.
off, dude.
Damn, Zin! Why'd you retire, bro?
That's a King Butter performance right there. You were absolutely buttered.
Bro, I'm gonna try to convince Seth, man. And Zinni, you wanna be like left bench?
Yeah, I'm done. I'll be the substitute. Because if you need me, dude, like just, I'm there.
So I'm not so sure about this, right? But I imagine Scump doesn't really want to step back into the team. iLLeY, I guess, technically is their substitute right now. And Methodz, like, he's obviously not the ideal sub anyway, because if Methodz can replace anybody on the team, it's probably only going to be Dashy, really, in terms of roles, right? Like, he's not going to be hopping onto an SMG, right, Zinni? So that's where you want your ARs, or you want your substitute, sorry, to be a bit more versatile, as an iLLeY could be, or as other players could be. Hopefully not necessary, of course. But the idea that OpTic have iLLeY and they have Scump and they have Methodz there, if necessary, is probably quite ideal just in case anything was to go wrong. Thieves, though, I believe they had Pentagram. I'm not exactly sure who their sub even is this season, but their result at Major 3 was far from optimal for this team. Top 8 in the end. Their online split was pretty respectable. I believe they lost their first game to Vegas. They then beat FaZe online, but a pretty suspect FaZe respawn performance, to be honest. They beat Surge, which is a good result. They destroyed the Rokkr, which I believe they then destroyed them again on LAN. And then they lost to Boston. That was their online split, but then they went to LAN, got bodied by FaZe in the first round, and that's a FaZe that were pretty good this tournament on the whole. Okay, they got top 3, but the only matches they won were destroying Thieves and beating Surge game 5 round 11. Outside of that, FaZe didn't look super impressive, but they did blow Thieves out of the park, and then Thieves beat Rokkr, but a terrible Rokkr team, and even map 1 in that series was pretty competitive, and Rokkr usually are competitive in game 1, a Rokkr team that went 4 in 18 map count this stage, and then they lost to Vegas again on LAN. Now that first map, if the comeback doesn't happen, maybe they win that series and they don't lose full, but still, Thieves top 8 here after going off a crazy losers run back at Major 2 all the way to the grand finals. Many expected, wow, Thieves are going to kick on from that, the world champion last year, they're going to come good again, but are they straight up as good at this game? Because again, I think it's their search and destroy that's letting them down. Their control has been good this year, their hard one has been good this year, it's been good enough against the top teams, but their search hasn't been it. Even though they have one of the better first blood rates in the league, Kenny has a 15 and 8 first blood rate, Envoy 13 in 10, and okay, like the rest of the guys are okay, but they just can't seem to convert these 4v3s. It's been a consistent trend with this Thieves team from back in the early Vanguard days, where they would have an advantage, they would squander all their S&E advantages, and that's how they would lose these series, that's how they would lose the tournaments, and once they got good in search or good enough in search, their respawn was good enough and their chemistry was good enough to take them further than they needed to be. But right now, their respawn isn't that good relative to the opposition, and their search and destroy is pretty mediocre, and they've got some weaknesses in that game mode as well. So they're just not quite what they were last year, even in other aspects of the game. And the interesting thing to me is, like, last season, it was their first season with that new roster. It was expected they would take some time. They brought in Shane as a new coach for the team. They put Kenny to the SMG and put Drazah to the flex. It's understandable why they took several months in last year's title in Vanguard to actually get good. Like, they made some changes, therefore they got good at the end of the year. This year, though, they've started out on that boat, right? They've got Kenny on the sub already, they've got Drazah on the flex already, and they were looking very good, or Drazah was looking great at the start of the year. Octane also was during stage 2, and Envoy's been, I think, their best performer on the whole, and Kenny's been pretty underwhelming outside of his search and destroy, to be honest, which really is what props up his numbers here, because outside of that, his numbers in terms of kills and damage in the respawns are absolutely woeful based on SMGs. It's only that great search and destroy first blood and damage rate that's keeping him up at a 78 here. And look, maybe Drazah had a few pints before this clip right here, but he gave his thoughts on their performance and says, look, I've had enough of this, I'm getting back in the lab, we're not losing anymore, and we're coming for that glory at the World Championship. So guy doesn't seem to care about Major 4, Major 5, but he's coming for that back-to-back ring, and it's going to be a tall order for them to achieve this based on their current performance level.
Back in the lab. We got a few tournaments left. We got champs on the way. If y'all know me, I'm not letting it rock. I'm not losing like that. I'm not losing anymore. So we're back in the lab. We're upgrading the setup a little bit, but we're back in the lab. and I'm not losing no more.
So these are the overall numbers here, just some of their results from Stage 3 and Major 3, of course. Like the losses to FaZe, Boston, and Vegas, of course, to go out of the tournament. Very much surprising indeed. Their Search and Destroy has kind of been the letdown, I would say. 16 and 19 in Search and Destroy. Positive in the respawns, but that's not necessarily good enough against the top teams in the league. And yes, they've been better on LAN than they have been online. They had that ridiculous 15 in 1 map count run in the losers bracket at Major 2, and they've still got that in the locker. But, you know, it's how it goes. Some teams catch fire for a time, as OpTic did in this losers bracket at their home major, as Thieves did previously at Major 2. Does that mean that either of those teams are going to be able to win a championship that year? Difficult to say. And I think it's more interesting with Thieves just because we've seen what their level looks like last year, Major 4 and Champs. They were unbelievable. No one could come anywhere near what they were able to accomplish last year, and they've probably still got that in the locker. But it just felt like last year's game either suited them better, or this year it hasn't really worked out for them so far, even though they've started off on the same kind of, well, technique and layout for the roster as they had last year with the role changes they made in the middle of the season. And that's the thing, right? How long will this roster stay together? The longest lasting roster in COD history is, I'm guessing, the OpTic Dynasty throughout the majority, like at least half of the Advanced Warfare period, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, and the start of World War II. That's the longest roster we've had. Scump, Formal, Crimsix, Karma. But outside of that, there was the FaZe team that lasted a lot of the Jetpack era, and there was the FaZe team again in Cold War. Given how dominant FaZe were in Cold War, I thought that team after Cold War would last at least 2 more years at minimum, I thought, given the roster they had and the success they had in Cold War. But no, it took them 1 year of underperforming with Arcitys to drop him and get Slasher into the roster and make a change. It's not often you see a roster, it's not often at all you see a roster maintain their 4 players for more than 2 seasons. And, you know, Thieves are getting up on that point, right? They're getting to the end of this season. They're not going to make a change, I'm sure, just because of what they did last year with not making a change. But still, is it time at some point in the future to switch something up? And if they continue to not have success, that does take a toll on the chemistry internally. We've seen it time and time again in esports history, especially compared to teams like Toronto that have the talent, but also they've got the chemistry. Seemingly their setup is working very nicely. Even Hicksy mentioned on this podcast the other day with Merc and Maven that they made him do a personality test before he joins. I thought it was really interesting because, like, Ultra have obviously done a great job in the last couple of years at recruiting talent, scouting talent, bringing them into their system. All 4 players on Toronto's starting team now that just won the most recent event were at one point a substitute for the roster, and Hicksy just one great example. When he joined as a sub, they made him do interviews, they made him do personality tests so they could see whether he'd be coachable and stuff like this, and, you know, look at the, I guess, the 5 big personality traits and kind of see what type of player he is, whether he's going to be a good fit for the culture. And I thought that was a really interesting insight, no pun intended, as to the way that Ultra have managed to pick up some of these players over the last couple of years and fit them into their system so well, and obviously had great success as a result. So maybe something to learn there from other teams. But also, they haven't shied away of making changes if they feel like it's necessary to take their team to the next level, and it's usually worked out well over the last couple of years, and possibly Thieves could think of something similar down the line. Couple of things to finish out the video here with. Wanted to mention this from Methodz, a new series he's done, Ranked Play for Dummies, a series where he solo queues and eventually live comms ranked play, so really cool stuff. Great to see more and more content like this come out. We've got Rambo's content, we've got Methodz content now discussing how to play the game, and obviously Shotzzy's doing the great work as well. Ranked Play is popping off right now. Love to see it in many different ways, and it's good to see Methodz hopping on the train as well. And also, we looked at all the other player cards of the day pretty much so far. These were, of course, the cards of the team that took down Thieves to knock them out of the tournament, and it's Clayster with the 90 overall, and he's a 99 in Search and Destroy. I mean, look at these numbers here. 1.48 KD, highest kills per round for an AO in the league, highest damage per round for an AO in the league, very high first blood rate for an AO in the league. Remarkable stats from Clay. Yeah, okay, the respawn's not always there. 2Real, Tej having a hard time as expected. They're controlling to 1 in 7, but in the other modes, they're good enough to get over the line. But it's just like, you know, is Clay going to have a stage like that again in Search? Probably not. Do they need an upgrade? I would say they probably do, but still, it's an exciting team to watch their progress nonetheless. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.